stated qualifications.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Athens City Council. It is on or about 3 p.m. on Friday, March 30th, 2007. City Council is meeting in a special session to consider two ordinances. We do have a quorum with 6 of 7 members present. And of course, in special sessions, we have a abbreviated agenda. Ordinance 3507, an ordinance amending Ordinance 02807, authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a professional legal services contract on behalf of the City of Athens related to claims against several lead-based paint and lead manufacturers in Ohio in order to remediate the hazards in the City of Athens, to add an emergency clause and declare an emergency. Before we move forward with this, I would like to point out that 03507 is asking for an emergency clause, and I would assume that we will be asking for 03507 to be considered under suspension of the rules. The Ohio Revised Code requires that in order to suspend the rules, we need 3/4 of council voting in the affirmative. For an emergency clause, there needs to be 2/3 of council voting in the affirmative. Law Director Hunter has ruled that when someone has a conflict of interest, that the percentages would be calculated on those that are able to vote. With those that are present tonight, and given the fact that Councilmember Bain has declared that she does have a conflict of interest due to the fact that her husband does hold some stock in one of the plaintiffs in the litigation. For suspension of the rules, we will need 5 of the 6 members of council voting in the affirmative, and we will need 4 of 6 of the present members of council voting for the emergency clause or voting for ultimate passage. So with that said, Member Phillips.
Oh, actually, it's
I'm sorry,
it's
Member
my
Weil.
committee. I move suspension of the rules in 03507.
Second.
This essentially is very similar to what we did earlier this week, to add the emergency clause for the to enter into litigation, the process of litigation. The concept there is that this may or may not go to, in terms of the hearing on the veto of Strickland's, it would fall under that we would actually may lose out in terms of the timing by April 2nd, which would not give us a lot of time to put this in place. And that's the timing issue, is for the suspension.
Motion and a second on suspension of the rules. Is there further discussion on suspension only? Member Patterson.
Does the prior ordinance still stand?
Yes.
Okay.
This is an amendment to it, I understand.
Right, I understand that.
Okay.
That's my understanding, and the clerk is agreeing with me.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 3507?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
I regard that as 5 in the affirmative, so the rules have been suspended.
I move adoption of 03507.
Second.
Essentially, this is to speed up the pace for our ordinance 2807, which is to enter into litigation with the paint companies. Some of the discussion and the reason why it failed earlier was because we were worried about the costliness and the time in terms of getting the timing for getting the public records in place. There's nothing that says we have to do that immediately, or rather, well, we have to do it all immediately. I mean, we have lots of information out there that would be relevant and important and can be sent, and the other stuff that will take time digging might take time. Even if we didn't enter into this emergency clause, we are still involved, and we still have to do the public records within 14 days regardless. Those are the main 2 points there. The other one is, I think you saw the letter from Gary Hunter, an email sometime the 28th, dated 28th, that we could actually withdraw if we choose, that it bogs us down too much. We have that option as well. So it's not like we're going to be stuck.
Further comments? Member Bishop?
Well, I had voted, as we all did, yes for this ordinance in the beginning, so I will support this today. However, I think what the most important thing is not what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future, whether we get, some money from this, but what we can do right now. And what this really has done is kind of raise to the fore the issue of possible lead contamination from paint. And the interesting thing about this is there are some pretty simple solutions that community members, family members can take. Lead is really only an issue primarily for young children. And what parents can do basically is not only help children not chew on windowsills perhaps, but also to wipe off, I understand, their windowsills, and whatever dust is left there from lead paint. And it's probably going to raise the issue of lead pipes in water. And there's a very simple solution for that. You just let your tap run for 1 minute, and it basically clears the water from any lead contamination, if there is any in there. So because this is something that parents can actually protect their children from if they think there's a problem, I've been talking with Debbie and the health department and other members of council, and what I'm proposing is that we basically allocate $500 from city council funds to the health department so that the health department can take a more active role in educating community members, providing information about how to protect their children from lead. So I will be asking after we deal with this ordinance whether people agree. The government channel has agreed to provide some more information about lead protection from lead contamination, and also the website. So I think that it's incumbent upon us to take an active role in helping community members, if they think there's a problem, to protect themselves from lead contamination. So I think the ordinance is one issue, but our own ability to provide information to the public is another. And so I'm going to ask, after this ordinance is over, that we allocate that money to the health department.
And Member Bishop, I would ask that that be in a separate ordinance brought before council at the next meeting.
Okay.
Or
Does that need to be an ordinance? It doesn't have to be an ordinance, apparently. But if you want time to think about it, I can bring it up.
I doubt that it's an issue of
Okay.
such gravity that
Okay.
the council members would need time to think about it. We could do it
Okay.
as just a
After.
referendum of council. Okay.
Okay.
Debbie?
I'm really glad that this discussion has brought more attention to this issue, because I think it is a really important issue, and one that, we all need to be aware of, and making sure that people know how to mitigate the risk. So I've really appreciated Member Bishop's suggestion that we go ahead now and really engage in some educational efforts of our own. I would also say that, the reason that I believe we're reconsidering this today is that when we looked at this on Tuesday, there were quite a few questions that were raised. And I think that people felt like they didn't have enough information, and there were some concerns about the cost of responding to the open records request. I think we've gotten answers to a lot of those questions, and that, I've talked with the mayor and the law director about how to respond to the records request, and the fact that we are going to have to, one way or the other. So I think that we've gotten a lot of answers regarding that, regarding the ability to withdraw if we would choose to at a later time, and regarding the reason that there really is a deadline for our possible participation. So I hope that the new information is helpful to folks.
Other comments? Member Sands?
I will just say that I, as every other member of council, originally voted for this concept of the ordinance. When we began to hear about the requirements, the time, the limited time to respond, the amount of work that it was going to take for response, I began to have doubts. My questions, as Member Phillips has indicated, have been answered to a point that I have a level of confidence that we can handle these requests in a reasonable manner. And so then I go back to my original vote, thinking this was a wise thing for Athens City Council to do. I just want to pile on and add my congratulations to Member Bishop for taking this one step further, and I hope that we can all agree to follow her lead. Thank you.
Other comments? Member Weil.
I would like to echo that. I think awareness of our environment in general, whether it be lead or other conditions, is something we should be looking at all the time. Discussion about lead in pipes, I started looking that up on the web because it was something that came up. And I know it was very in common use many years ago, and it really has to do with the location and the type of water that you have. So these are things that we have to be aware of, that, it's just not a blanket problem, or just that we may be immune to it or not immune to it. We have to be aware of what's going on in our environment. And awareness, this is part of the awareness right now.
Member Bishop.
So I just want to add something about water, and Mayor, you can help this. I mean, there is an EPA regulation on lead in water. I mean, so if I think citizens can feel comfortable that if they're getting city water, it's been tested and declared drinkable and not contaminated with lead. So I don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves. But, those people who want to be extra cautious, if you let your water run, for 1 minute, it's a simple solution. And I think that's the kind of information we want people to know.
Any other comments by council members on O35? We have been joined by the mayor. Is there anything you wish to say on lead-based ordinance? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance O3507?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
5-1. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 3607, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract to upgrade the city's telephone and computer networking systems. Member Bishop.
Okay. We have talked about this in committee a couple of times, the need for the city to have an upgraded telephone system, and also local area network connection of the buildings with each other so they can share databases, et cetera. And we were looking at a cost of $502,000, and I had asked last time how much of that was for hardware, materials, and how much was for labor, and so I have that breakdown. It's roughly $320,000 in materials, which I understand would be bid out through the state contracts, so that would be bid out, and then about $183 in labor, for a total of $502. And we did have some presentations on exactly what that would buy us: upgraded telephones, upgraded local area network, and the possibility of having, I understand, some wireless access for police and fire when and if the need arises. So, Mayor, do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I think you've described that well. I think the funding mechanism that we finally ran down is we're taking the accumulation of the estate taxes over a 3-year period, less what we capital-wise bought of the fire truck. That's about $281,000, and transferring that to capital. And then from the unappropriated balance of capital, doing most of the difference there, except for $50,000, which would have been in current year's budget. Right now, I think we have $155,000 or so that's not spoken for allocated, so it still leaves us $100,000 there. Plus, I think there will still be about $190,000 in the capital budget line. And that gets away from the need to borrow. There's no sense going out and borrow when we have the funds to do it in capital. And then we will make a charge back to the water and the sewer fund based on the actual cost once it's completed.
Okay.
I guess I'm probably the only person in the room. Paul may have sat down there when we bought the last phone system, and I remember kind of locking horns with the former mayor over that one. I was talking with Debbie, and I'm not 100% sure, but it runs in my mind. Of course, this does a lot more than the last phone system did, that one cost us $26,000. And it's lasted quite well. I mean, this is a lot
Inflation.
different.
Huge inflationary factor there.
Well, but this is all your computer networking
Right,
and
right, right.
everything. So we're not comparing apples to apples by any chance at all. I remember one of the big arguments that we had for that one was that it was a joint system between the city and the county, and that we were able to transfer calls back and forth. If somebody called the city auditor, and in reality, they needed the county auditor, we were able to transfer the call. And for quite a few years, there were financial allocations made. Is this going to be a joint system with the county at all? And are we even still doing that? I haven't heard that mentioned in quite a while.
It's still a joint system today. This one would not be,
Okay.
the new one.
Does everyone at the county know that, and are they?
I doubt if everybody knows it. but-
Oh, those that need to know it, do they know it?
I think so.
Okay, okay.
Oh.
Paul?
So, Mayor, does that mean we can sell our system to the county? If they need spare parts?
I'll look into that.
Just wondering, just asking.
Good thought.
I think it's called residual value. Any other comments?
Well, I just want to say that this, we did decide on, there are lower-end systems, but basically we decided that we would like this capability.
And actually, this is not
The top.
the top of the line.
Right.
But it does allow us at some point to add
Right.
those layers that would take us there if we felt the city needed it or a certain department needed that capability.
Right.
So,
And there's no sense of being out of date before we start.
Absolutely.
I have that problem when I buy a computer sometimes.
I think if I've learned one thing, being somewhat responsible for the government channel and having to handle technology upgrades for medical record systems and all of that kind of stuff, you need to buy state-of-the-art when you buy it, because it is moving so fast that to do anything short of that is ridiculous. And I think that from the little bit that I have looked at this is by far the best way to go that will allow us to continue, as Jim said better than I am, what we need to do. It looks like everything eventually can be wireless-based and throughout the city, and I think it's what we need to do. It's very expensive, but it cannot be compared to, for us to call it a phone system is very misleading.
Right.
And I think if a lot of people would think that the city is buying a $500,000 phone system, we have not communicated well. So, other comments?
Not on this.
Been read for the first time.
Okay. Okay.
There
And
is
just-
another comment.
Well, not on this, but I want to just, before we go, I want to make sure that we ask for some general consensus on this allocation to the health department.
Do you want to move to,
I want to move to...
Just make a motion that we
yeah.
do that?
Do I just make a motion? How do we do this?
It's not on the agenda.
It's
Well,
not...
it's not on the agenda.
Oh, it's not on the agenda.
And we have a
Okay.
very limited
Okay,
agenda, and
so
the
we'll put
rules
it
of
on.
council really
Okay,
limits us as to what we deal with in a special session.
Okay.
So that's why I mentioned, I've
Oh.
got, everybody
Right.
agrees with what you want to do, but
Okay.
pulling council and doing it on a special session,
is,
uh,
okay.
I think is probably not proper, but I have no doubt you can pull off what you want to do here
Okay,
quite soon.
okay, very good. So we'll do it Monday.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Having
And would that be done, you said it's not an ordinance, so how will
a
she do
minor
it?
amount like that, I think, can just be done if we would
With
get a
the-
sense of council that
Okay.
So we'll just raise it as some kind of a issue on
we'll
Monday.
make sure by
Some
Monday
kind
night
of
we'll know the
issue.
proper way to deal with it.
Very good.
I don't
Okay.
know that spending ordinances should be just handled as an
Okay.
issue, but
Okay,
we'll make sure that you have
okay,
the vehicle you need to carry out what needs done here.
great. I know.
Having addressed all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned.